Do you have a family member who is extremely stubborn, and often their stubbornness gets them into trouble? My grandfather back in Romania, he is an insanely intelligent man. But sometimes his insane intelligence can get in his way, and pride gets the best of him. He always thinks he knows what's better for him, and he never listens to anyone. For example, in Romania, one of the common things that you see on TV are constant ads about various drugs and treatments for various health problems that you didn't even know you had. And one of the things that he does is that he goes down a rabbit hole of researching these drugs in an effort to maintain his vitality at the ripe age of 88. And my grandfather is very healthy, but he is so obsessed with staying healthy that he constantly researches these drugs to the point where he thinks he knows better than the doctor. So when he goes to the doctor's office, he actually tells the doctor what to prescribe to him. And of course, when the doctor refuses or thinks that that's not a good idea, he goes to another doctor. And when that doctor doesn't say what he wants to hear, then he goes to another doctor, and he continuously does this until he finally has a doctor or some other medical professional tell him what he wants to hear. And sometimes this is how we treat our relationship with Jesus. Imagine going to the doctor for help, but then telling the doctor what to prescribe for you or what treatment he should give you. It makes no sense, right? Sometimes we go to Jesus and do the exact same thing. We come to Jesus in prayer and say, Jesus, I have this problem. I really need help, but I want you to help in this way. You tell God your plans and you expect God to follow your plans as opposed to you following the plan that God has set out for you. And this isn't rooted in faith. In fact, this isn't rooted in the opposite of faith, fear. And what's interesting is that often our fear leads to anxiety, anxiety leads to control, and then control eventually leads to greater suffering than we had set up for ourselves initially. I remember one of my biggest fears was always losing money or not making enough money. So when I got married, one of my biggest fears was not being able to provide for my family. I always had these insane plans. And I thought to myself, if we don't stick to this plan, we as a family are going to fail financially. As a result, I got super anxious. And because of my anxiety, my wife suffered from it and caused her a lot of anxiety. Until one day I decided, you know what? If I'm authentically a Catholic Christian, I need to surrender my anxieties to God and allow Him to take control. There's only so much I can do. I can't tell the future. So I need to put in the work, but allow God to take over at a certain point and allow Him to guide my life. And this led me from a place of fear to a place of hope. And when this happened, I found that, everything is okay. Not that there aren't challenges, but surrendering myself to God has allowed me to be at peace. And often what He had planned for me was significantly greater than what I had planned for myself. Fear can often become a great obstacle in our relationship with God. And it often keeps us from allowing God to work in our lives. It restricts His work. Now remember, God respects our freedom and He doesn't want to impose Himself on us. So when we tell God, no, I don't want you in this part of my life, He will actually respect that freedom and allow us to take control, even if it means for us to fail in that area of our lives. This is why I love this Sunday's gospel reading. This Sunday's gospel focuses on Jesus healing two people. One, the hemorrhaging woman who came and touched His cloak, and the daughter of Jairus, who appeared to be dead, but then God heals and raises her back to life. Particularly, I want to focus on Jairus, this Roman centurion who wasn't even a Jew, a fellow believer, but Jesus still chose to help him. So why? Jairus had faith. He had hope. He saw his daughter was severely ill and potentially even dead, but he had faith and hope and didn't give up. Despite what the religious authorities around him were saying, those people who were supposed to represent God were feeding Jairus fear as opposed to hope. Listen to what the the religious authorities and the crowds are saying to Jairus as he's speaking to Jesus. Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? They thought they knew what was happening. They thought that the daughter was dead and that's it. Jairus should just move on with his life. But Jairus had hope. He had faith. He wasn't acting out of a fear. So he approached God out of faith and entrusting his circumstance to God, completely surrendering to him. And I love Jesus' response to the religious authorities. He says this, do not fear, only believe. This is very interesting because the religious authorities didn't really seem afraid, but yet it was fear or hopelessness that was driving their response to Jairus. And then, you know the rest of the story. What happens? Jesus goes to Jairus' house and he brings Jairus' daughter back to life. So many times we listen to the world or to ourselves, to the flesh, and allow fear to be the driver of our decision. Sometimes we give up hope in areas of our lives where there is much hope. Sometimes we kick God out of areas of our lives where God wants to heal. Remember, Jesus is the divine physician, and he can heal parts, really broken parts in our lives. As Catholic Christians, I think we need to be people of hope and have the confidence and have the faith to surrender our crosses to God. When we allow God to operate in our lives, we move from a place of fear to the place of faith. And I think that's the message of the gospel today, is moving from a place of fear to a place of faith, and then miracles can happen. We just have to get out of the way sometimes. Sometimes we just have to say, hey, God, that's it. I have no control in this situation of my life. I can't predict the future. I want you to take over. I surrender myself to you. A prayer that I recommend to you is the Surrender Novena. This is a prayer that I've been praying for several weeks now. As soon as I pray the 9 days, I start all over again at the beginning, and it has had a tremendous impact on my life. The whole purpose of it is to surrender our lives, to all areas of our lives, to Jesus, and allow him to work freely without us holding him back. Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Do as you please.